Hi, I'm very excited today to introduce you to someone who's made a special trip out to Australia, Billboard Chris. Some of you may know him from social media. He's very famous on Twitter and other platforms. And I just thought we'd have a chat about what he's doing here and what led him to come to Australia. So welcome to Australia. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a great honor. In my home country, no politicians want to meet with me. So
Right.
it's different down here. I'm meeting with a lot of them. But I came to Australia just to do what I do, which is have conversations to raise awareness about what I consider to be the greatest child abuse scandal in the history of modern medicine, the business of trying to change the sex of children.
Mm-hmm. And why don't you tell us a bit more about like what got you into that and what you mean by that exactly for the people
Sure.
that might be watching that don't understand exactly what you're talking about there.
Of course. So I'm a dad. I've got
So
two
am I.
girls.
I got 3 boys.
All right. So as any parent knows, that's what our life is all about. When you have kids, it's not about you. It's about taking care of your kids and hopefully providing a good world for them when they grow up and when you're gone one day. So I don't like this world that we're leaving for them right now. And in 2019, I came across this term puberty blockers online, and I thought to myself, what the heck are those? At the time, I think my girls were 7 and 9 years old. So I started researching this, and kids who have been led to believe that they were born in the wrong body, which makes no sense, which nobody can define. There are tens of thousands of kids across the Western world being given this chemical castration drug. It's called Lupron or triptorelin, depends where you're at. It's a gonadotropin-releasing hormone analog is what these are. They stop the pituitary gland from releasing a couple hormones which trigger estrogen or testosterone in girls and boys. So when kids are on these drugs, they won't release their natural hormones, which means they won't go through puberty. Their secondary sex characteristics won't develop. Girls' breasts won't grow, their hips won't get wider, boys' penises don't grow, their bones are losing density. Some studies show that IQ loss is happening, even cancers are happening. And then kids are receiving the opposite sex's hormones. So girls get testosterone, which leads to all sorts of problems. Of course, they're going to develop facial and body hair. They're going to get stronger. Their body fat's going to get redistributed, which they might like in the short term. Might get a temporary high from that. This is a class 3 drug, which might give them more confidence as well in the short term. But in the long term, it's causing vaginal and uterine atrophy. They're having to get hysterectomies. We're sending teenage girls into menopause, sterilizing children. And this is, in my estimation, child abuse. We should be telling our children they're beautiful just as they are, not that they were born wrong and need to be something else.
And the justification for doing this, many people have been pushing this idea that we have to do this, like it's a matter of life and death. And many of these people that have been pushing this, many of these activists, they say, would you rather, one of the most horrible lines that you hear is, would you rather a dead son or a live daughter or something like this?
That's right.
And but recently, I've always been skeptical of that, but recently we've had the Cass review come out in the UK, which has sort of thrown shade over all of these claims around any sort of benefit of these medicines being given to kids. I mean, have you found the conversations that you're having with people are different since the Cass review's come out?
Well, most people haven't heard of it because most people who know about that are already kind of deeply involved in this conversation. We already knew all of this, really. There have been other systematic reviews done. There was already one done in England before, and Finland and Sweden. Germany just conducted one where they looked at all the scientific literature and found this isn't helping kids. But this is the most thorough review for sure. It's 388 pages long. It's been done over 3.5 years. And there is absolutely no justification for what they're doing to kids. It's not helping them psychologically. It's also a myth that kids are killing themselves if we don't transition them. We now have a very large study out of Finland just about a month ago, the first of its kind into this, where they looked at more than 2,000 kids over 23 years who attended the gender clinic, and they compared them to a control group of more than 17,000. Over those 23 years, there were 7 suicides at the gender clinic for those kids. That works out to 0.051% on an annualized basis, 1 out of 2,000 kids. No epidemic of suicides. And those numbers were very similar to kids who were also having mental health difficulties from the control group. There was really no difference. So it's just a lie. And of course, every suicide is a tragedy. But these kids are dealing with other issues in life. Autism is very prevalent.
Yeah.
Sexual abuse is extremely common. Probably a majority of these kids. And that's not me saying this. This is the former president of the American College of Pediatricians. He estimates 60% of these kids have been sexually abused. If you read the stories of these detransitioners, it's a common thread. It's children with borderline personality disorder or their parents who have it. An older study showed that 52% of the mothers had borderline personality disorder, compared to just 6% of the population. And there's just something else going on, but they're not getting treated for that. The only model today that is pushed by these gender clinics and the World Health Organization or the Endocrine Society or the American Academy of Pediatrics is affirm. Just affirm. We don't care what else is going on with these kids. Affirm a delusion that they were born wrong.
And that's even more important in Victoria, because we've got these laws in Victoria which make it illegal to do anything else. What's the situation in Canada with that? Like, is it actually illegal to do anything other than affirm?
So they passed a conversion therapy law in 2022.
And it's always so, like, deceptive the way that they, because like no one likes conversion therapy. I haven't met anyone who supports it, but that's what they call these bills, right? But it's actually nothing to do with that.
Correct. So the way they get broad public approval is they say, well, we shouldn't try to change someone's sexuality. We shouldn't try to make gay people straight, because of course almost everyone agrees with that. But that's one component of these bills. The other component is gender identity. That's the real reason these bills are written. And now it's a crime in Canada to help your child feel comfortable with their body. You have to affirm that they are trans. It's fine to take a girl and convince her she's a boy. That's not conversion therapy. It's fine to take a boy who's very effeminate, who might grow up to be gay, and tell him that he's really a girl. That's not conversion therapy, according to this bill. But if you want to help them feel comfortable with their bodies and tell them that they're perfect just as they are, that's now conversion therapy. To disagree with sterilizing your own child is conversion therapy. This is crazy. And this bill also passed in Victoria in 2021. So along with all of this is an attack on parental rights. And I'm all about parental rights. There's one right they don't have, which is the right to abuse their child, obviously. But even in schools now in Victoria, any adult can deem a child to be a mature minor at the school. And it is policy to hide from parents that their own child has a new name, new pronouns. Dr. Hilary Cass admits this is a grave psychological intervention. It's causing psychological harm to these children, but they're hiding it from parents.
Yeah, and like that was one really interesting thing in the Cass review. They spoke a lot about social transitioning and urged great caution with it, because it's not a harmless thing. Like, you know, in Victoria, like teachers can do it. You don't need you don't even need the parents involved. You don't need psychiatrists or anyone involved. You can just do it. And in the Cass review, it was quite clear. They're saying, well, this is an active intervention that should be, you know, if you're going to do it, even though there's no medicine involved, it still should be very, very careful. And the idea of teachers doing it without their parents' knowledge and consent, and like I've spoken to many parents who this has happened to, is outrageous, right? Like,
it's so outrageous. Look, teachers are already mandatory reporters. If they think there is child abuse going on, they have to call the authorities. This is the one issue in the world, all across the West, where they treat parents by default as abusers. No one knows a child like their parents. I've talked to so many parents. I've been doing this for almost 4 years in September. I've talked to hundreds of these parents, and you know, they see their kids' mental health spiraling, and they go, what's going on? And this one mom I talked to back home, she asked the school 3 times if there was something going on. 3 times they lied to her.
wow.
She finally found out her daughter was identifying as a boy and pulled her kid from school. 45 other girls in middle school were also identifying as boys or non-binary in that same school. This is a social contagion, primarily affecting girls. And it's all based on the lie that they have a gender identity that might be different than their sex. If you look at the most widely used resource to define gender identity across the world. It's this cute little image of a gingerbread man called the gingerbread person.
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah, and it says your gender identity is based on your personality, your job, your hobbies, likes, dislikes, roles in society, and expectations upon you. So these are all stereotypes.
Yeah.
If a boy wants to bake and cook and dance,
I love cooking.
those are traditionally, that's the realm of girls. Does this put him on the spectrum of being a girl? Of course not.
And the crazy thing is, when I was a kid and going through high school, they used to have anti-bullying programs and stuff. And one of the things that they used to talk about is gender stereotypes. And if someone doesn't, conform to normal gender stereotypes, that's fine. Like, and I think most people are cool with that. Like, if a girl likes football or a guy likes cooking, or
Beautiful.
if girls want to wear pants or not dresses, or like, that's fine. Like, that's just them, right? They're just doing things different, and it doesn't mean that they're different. Their gender is necessarily different. It just means that they want to act differently to other people. I mean,
right?
We had emo kids or whatever, back in the 90s.
That's right, and goth.
Yeah,
a lot of these kids that were goth back in the 90s, they're the trans kids of today.
Yeah, where the goths go?
They're not there. But what's fascinating about this is when I've had tens of thousands of conversations on this, but the people who are aggressive and hostile towards me, if I say what we just said, that there's no right or wrong way to be a girl or a boy, that we shouldn't put them in some stereotypical box, they all agree. They all agree that boys can like to cook and dance, and that girls who play football are still girls. But they have this blind spot. They don't see that they're pushing stereotypes to such a degree that if a child is gender nonconforming, they must be trans. And they won't find true happiness unless we do body modification and sterilize them and turn them into anorgasmic lifelong pharmaceutical patients, which is what is happening. So we just have to keep educating the population because people have been confused. The language associated with this whole ideology is very confusing on purpose. And we just need to keep educating people, because when enough parents figure out what's going on, they're going to put their foot down. We're going to put a stop to this. It just takes some time.
And thank you so much for what you're doing. And thank you for coming to Australia and Melbourne especially. And for those of you watching, you'll know that what we've been calling for in Victoria is to hit the pause button on what they're doing with gender medicine for children and call for an independent inquiry similar to what they're doing for the cash review in the UK.
Being a libertarian is sometimes described as like being the only sober person in the car and no one will let you drive. The government is driving us into the dark.